Okay, so I'm actually going to start by, we're going to add to this. So who here picked a font weight for some of in their font design, decided to use a different font weight, or did everyone use normal? Okay, if you did, this is where you'll get used to start adding. So I'll go through the syntax of CSS. This is called the selector. And in this case, our selector is the body tag. Okay, so everything in the body tag in table is selector. There is then an opening curly brace and then a closed curly brace. Okay, and everything within those curly braces. Sorry, Zach, what was that? It's called a. If I plus it, it's a good question. It looks like this is called a curly brace. We're going to use these lots. Okay? Brackets are used, but they're used differently. And we actually will get used to, they're called parentheses. So let me zoom that down again. Now, you then have rules, and each of these rules is separated by a semicolon. So let's say I decided now I don't know if this font weight is available for this font, but I decided to use font weight 300. I used a slightly font weight 300. When I save that, it's actually, I don't know whether there is a font weight. Yeah, so it changed, so it's still that font family, but I'm now applied the font weight 300. Now I'm going to tell you a little trick. Technically, the last line of CSS does not need a semicolon because there's not another piece of CSS. Please, I've been designing web pages for years, and I can't tell you how many times I've forgotten to put a semicolon, and then I decide this is going to be color red, okay? Because there's no semicolon there, notice that's not the right color. So it actually reads them as together and it says, what is that? I don't know what that is. Please add a semicolon every time. I said, I'm telling you now, technically it's not needed. There is no technical reason to have it, but it means that when you go to add another line, because you're always adding to CSS, you don't have to remember to go back because you forget and it stops. And I literally have done this, and I've spent 5 hours trying to work out why my CSS wasn't applying. Okay, so it will send you crazy. Okay, Kai, you thought yesterday was frustrating? Wait till you get an error in CSS and you can't understand why it's not applying. And it can be zero. So I go Control S, and I'm now applying 3 rules. So red is applied to that. Because I applied font weight at the body level, it's applied to both these. So if I wanted that, but let's say for the header tags, I wanted font weight 500. Ooh. 500. I need to add that down to override the font from the body. Does that make sense? So I'll go F5. Oh, there's an error there. There might not be a font weight 400, 500 for that font. What are we doing here? No, it depends on what there is. Yeah, there it is. So now that font weight is, and that's so if the font weight isn't that font style, that font family doesn't have a font weight, it'll just ignore it. Okay, so you need to make sure your font weight applies. We are now, can I get you to close that door, please? We are now going to apply a menu. Okay, so I'm going to show you this. We'll go back and do this next lesson for sure. So in the design toolkit, under HTML, you'll see the generator. You'll see a Bootstrap form menu generator. Okay, so I'm going to click on that. Now the first thing I need to do is, where is my menu? Actually, there's a step before that. Actually, I'll go back a step, sorry. For Bootstrap to work, it does actually need a inclusive tag. So it is, I'll show you, introduction, how is the, contents, so I've just got to find it. I'll find it and show. Actually, no, it's in layout. Container, sorry. So it needs an overall container. So we are going to use, there's 2 containers used. I'd like you to use container. Okay, it's the easiest to use. There is a container fluid you can learn later on. And I'm now going to put that into my code, and I'm going to paste this here. So I'm going to put that inside. So a div tag, I'm going to end this lesson here. A div tag means a divider. It has, and it's a way of creating components of a website, and you do components within components. Okay, so this is actually going to be our overarching container that sits within body. So in the class means container, and that's going to apply in Bootstrap. There is a heap of rules that are applied to the class container, and our content goes in here. So I'm going to save that, and you're going to see when we go back to my website, F5.
How long would it take to make a website?
A professional website can be done in a day. We're not going too slow here. We're actually doing quite a bit. Given the amount of instruction I'm giving you, you're actually doing quite quickly. Okay? So do you notice all of a sudden that just tabbed in? So I'll just let me delete that. Delete, Control S, F5. Okay, so at the moment, there's no real rules. I'm now gonna apply that container again, save it, and go F5. And now what's that automatically done is moved it, and so it's automatically applied some margins on the left and the right. And if I go F12, my F12 tools, I'll get that out of device, I can go here, and you'll see there's some padding applied. So if I go inspect, that actual block of text, that div, is just that blue section, and there's some padding either side, and that automatically centers on my page. Okay? But if I step down to a mobile device, it gets rid of it. Okay? So what it's doing is applying rules. We need to make sure, so one of the big mistakes I'm going to tell you right now you'll make is some of you will try and put some stuff down here. And because that's outside of the container class, the container rules won't apply. Does that make sense? So you need to make sure they're in there. So what I actually suggest you do is add a comment here. So this should be start container. So I suggest you do this for everything you do. End container. So you know that's where it starts. So that tells you what that is. And if you want, you can actually, probably even easier, put it next to the div. Probably a much easier way of doing it, because then you know exactly what's happening on that page. That's where the container starts, that's where it ends. So that'll let you know if you're trying to find a div, it's there. Okay? So we'll do this next lesson. Okay? Can I get everyone to commit this first?